Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers post-game reaction, the final Lakers post-game reaction of the season. I am shocked. I am stunned. I thought the Lakers were going to at least win this game and push it to a game 6. Did not expect the season to be ending tonight. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I'm speechless. Like I'm still processing everything. I did not see this series going this way. I did not see the Lakers losing in 5. Obviously, I picked the Lakers in 6 to win this series. I thought the Wolves would present more of a challenge maybe than some did, but not like this. And a lot of offseason questions for the Lakers coming out of this one. I think that there needs to be a lot we unpack and talk about. For today's show, I'm not really going to focus on the game because I think there's certainly some takeaways and some trends from like a big picture perspective, but the game itself was in many ways just a continuation of the previous 4 games. So while there were some admirable performances and moments from several guys, I don't like the series is over. The season is over. I don't find much reason to go into the game specifically other than what we've learned coming out of this series. And I think that's what my focus is going to be. So the Lakers lost tonight 103-96 to be eliminated in 5 games to the Timberwolves. Emotions are high. Emotions are raw. I know a lot of people are upset right now, understandably so. A lot of people are frustrated, and there are a lot of overreactions. And I just want to remind everyone to take a deep breath and just remember where you were at with the Lakers a week ago going into this series. And some things have certainly changed, and I think some things have been exposed, and there are some glaring deficiencies with this roster in particular that I think need to be addressed. But a lot of this was stuff we knew. Some of it was stuff that the Lakers were able to overcome at various points in the regular season. But I think now we got a crystal clear look at some of the 16 game versus 82 game nature to certain players, some of the limitations with JJ as a coach and just some of his growing pains as he coached his first series. Luka got banged up and LeBron got banged up also in game 5. I think Austin had some struggles against Minnesota's size and length and just their perimeter defenders. So a lot to take away, a lot to learn from if you're the Lakers, but I don't think you need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. They need changes, but I don't think they need grand changes. So before we get into it, though, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out again to everybody in the chat. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. And before we get into the game quickly, I just want to say thank you to all of you for rocking with me this season and for helping grow out this channel, this show, this community. Late Night Gang, we've had a couple of meetups on the YouTube side. I think I entered the season with around 11,000 subscribers. I'm all the way up to about 27,000 now. So we more than doubled during the season. On the audio side, it has also grown as well and almost doubled in terms of listeners per episode. And a big part of that was the Luka trade too. So if you came over after the Luka trade, thank you. Certainly helped from a content perspective, but this has been a passion project of mine for the past 14 months, and we're only getting started. There's going to be bigger and better things beginning this offseason, including putting the final touches on the rebrand that I'm currently going through and going live more often and recording more episodes more often and starting memberships and merch and all that stuff. So be on the lookout for all of that. But I just wanted to give you all a big shout out for just your support and watching, listening, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, coming out to meet up at the 2 meetups that we've done. And there will be more meetups. There probably will be a meetup here in the next week or 2 in LA now that we have all this free time, unfortunately. So we'll maybe pick a big playoff game to go watch at a bar somewhere around here in LA. But just want to give you all a big shout out and just say thank you. The reason I say 5 more minutes and I go for another 40 minutes is because of you guys and just how much fun I have answering your questions and interacting with you all and building out this community. And so I will still be doing lives and going lives and the content's still going to be coming throughout the next weeks and months and whatnot. So just because it's the off season does not mean we don't have stuff to talk about. But with that said, let's get into Buha's big picture takeaway of the evening. And that is that the Lakers have a strong foundation, but changes need to be made. And so I think the Lakers clearly, if you take a step back, they won 50 games. They were the number 3 seed, and they went through multiple iterations of this group, right? So you have the initial 10-4 start. Then you had that midseason or quarter season malaise that they went through with the Miami loss, the Minnesota loss, the Atlanta loss. That was a rough road trip. Then they turn a corner and they change some things. They start Max. They change up the defensive scheme. I think LeBron kicks it into high gear defensively, and they identity shift from a team that was pretty good offensively but bad defensively to they start flipping that, and they start being not as good offensively but better defensively. And that translates into January when starting January 15th, they turn their season around with that Miami comeback. And then from that point on, they have that stretch of going 20-4. And that's also the AD Luka trade. AD gets injured. They start Jackson. They start playing smaller. Then they do the Luka trade. Should also mention back late December, as they're getting better defensively, they also trade for DFS, who helps unlock some of these centerless lineups. So then after the Luka trade, they go through some growing pains with that, and then continue the high level defense. The offense isn't quite where it should be, but then LeBron gets injured, Rui gets injured. They go through that little rough stretch, but then they close the season strong. They beat OKC in OKC. They beat Houston. They beat Memphis in Memphis. They beat Dallas in the emotional Luka return game. And the offense is starting to hum at a certain level, and we're starting to see both sides click of the centerless defense, switch everything, rotate, swarm, and offensively the 3-man actions with LeBron and Luka and Austin, and Luka just cooking everybody in the pick and roll, and LeBron playing some of the best basketball he's played over the last few years, Austin taking a leap as the number 3 guy, JJ coaching his ass off and making a bunch of adjustments and game plan specific, tactical, just adjustments, I guess would be the word. And so a lot of positives, and even Rob gets the extension, and he traded for DFS. He traded for Luka. He hired JJ when he was getting some attention, but not. There's plenty of league-wide skepticism as to JJ's ability to be a head coach. So a lot was going right during the regular season, and entering this playoff series, Lakers were universal favorites. They were the betting favorites. Pretty much all national people were picking the Lakers to win this. I picked the Lakers to win this. And then the bottom fell out. And I tried to communicate it after game 1 that I was pretty concerned with how the game went and how these two teams matched up with one another and just how that looked. But I thought there was a lot of things the Lakers could do better. They did do some of them better in game 2. Game 3 and 4 were close, despite in game 3, Luka dealing with that stomach bug. Game 4, playing the second half starters, the entire half. They were right there. And with, you can always go back and do the sliding door stuff. But if Luka gets the right call there against Jaden McDaniels, he gets fouled, he goes to the free throw line, 2 free throws with 30-something seconds left, LA's down 1. He probably makes both. He at least makes one, and the Lakers potentially win that game. Instead, they have to call timeout, burn their final timeout. They then turn the ball over because they're dealing with the 1 second difference between the shot clock and the game clock of getting the ball over. And then that leads to LeBron ultimately fouling Ant and Ant sealing the game at the free throw line. So you can do that for different games, different moments, but like that's a big one that they got wrong. That was a trip that should have been a foul on, and that could have been like, it would have been a 2-2 series, and maybe they still lose this game, and maybe they just lose in 6 in Minnesota, but we'll never know how things would have been different. I think at times it felt like the vibe was a little down, and they were almost accepting that they were about to lose. And you want to see a team have that fight, have that belief, have that confidence. But I think that was a really deflating loss for them in game 3 and 4 consecutively. I think were both really deflating losses for this group. But I said strong foundation because they still have Luka Doncic, who, for all what anyone wants to say, and I know there's going to be a lot of Luka criticism, a lot of Luka backlash, he is still, for my money, a top 5 player in the league. At worst, top 10. People could quibble with top 5 or not after this playoff series. I still would put him firmly in my top 5. I do not waver off that. I think there was a lot of things that went against him in terms of just the injury that he dealt with and getting traded. And then I think he wasn't fully right, clearly, especially toward the end of the series physically. And I think that compromised some of his defense. But clearly, defense has to be better. Conditioning has to be better. Like, those are 2 things that he has to address moving forward. But he still gives the Lakers a top 5 player, one of the best offensive players in the world. And there's a reason why the league reacted the way that they did after the Luka trade. There's a reason why Mavericks fans revolted and canceled season tickets and protested outside and were rooting against Dallas in Luka's return game. Like, this dude is special. He's a generational talent. And was this his best playoff series? No. And can he be better? Yes. But I don't want to lose sight of the big picture here of the Lakers have a generational talent who's 26, and there are things he can be better at. But even tonight, with the bum back after the Dante DiVincenzo foul, which I don't understand how that wasn't a flagrant one, he was gutting it out. He was still could barely even move by Luka standards, and was still finding ways to get to a step back, get downhill, create separation. And I thought, all things considered, what was impressive based on the clear physical limitations that he had at that point. But they have Luka, they have JJ, and I know JJ is the other person who's going to get a lot of criticism. And the more I thought about the game 4 second half, I get it in terms of the criticism. He was asked about it before the game. I don't think it was worded properly. The question, I think it was a little. It got him on his heels. It got him a bit defensive. And I think he has been a bit defensive in this series when challenged tactically or schematically or just challenged about his coaching. I think, and if you put yourself in JJ's shoes, it is understandable to an extent of this guy had to overcome certain things in terms of not having that coaching experience. And I think he overcame that by doing a lot of prep work, by talking to a bunch of people, by watching a lot of basketball and coming up with his own philosophies. But I think it is a little bit of a sensitive subject for him in terms of his lack of experience and people questioning that. Now, that does not mean he is above criticism or questioning. I think there were several things in this series that he dropped the ball with. I think I disagreed with the game 4 second half rotation. I think tonight, I actually thought Maxi Kleba held up fine relatively. Like, he was better than Alex Len. He was playing physical basketball and being a bit disruptive. And apparently he and Rudy Gobert don't really like each other. So that's like a little context there with that. and he picked up the 6th foul on Jaden McDaniels. He was setting hard screens. I thought defensively, he already came in and was communicating with guys on the back line and trying his best to, like, physically he wasn't moving that well, but like you could tell he was trying. He's smart. But like that was a risky move that I don't know I would have had the gumption to put in a Maxi Kleber. And I thought that was the state of the Lakers center situation. You have a game 5 elimination game and you are playing a guy who has not played in 3 months. And it's no shade at Maxi Kleber. It's just like, dude has not played in 3 months and he is on a new team, new coaching staff, new teammates, new system, new city, and it's the playoffs. And you're going up against one of the biggest teams in the league, one of the best defensive teams in the league, and you throw this guy in. And I thought I actually think he like held up fine and gave them, just kind of tread water for a few minutes. But like the fact that they even had to do that, I think was an indictment on the center position for the Lakers. But certainly with JJ, I think he could have handled the Jackson situation. But I think he should have pulled the plug on Jackson starting earlier. And then I also think he should have tried him out as a second unit guy when Rudy was off the floor. But you could always nitpick things. And I think JJ will learn. He said he has to get better as a coach. He's going to talk tomorrow again. He spoke tonight. We'll also talk tomorrow. The Lakers did exit interviews tonight. So we spoke with all the players. Haven't even mentioned him and probably should have mentioned him earlier. Like they have LeBron and we don't know yet what he's going to do in terms of, he said he's going to take some time and think about what he wants to do with his basketball future, if that is retiring or not, or if that is being a Laker or not, or just a lot of uncertainty with him. But that is something that that's his stock answer going into the summer always. So I think I would still bet, if I had to bet, on him being back for next season as a Laker. But with LeBron, you never know. But they have LeBron, who at 40 is doing things we've never seen before, was playing like a top 10 player this season. And I mean, this series was I thought largely awesome, especially on the defensive end. Offensively, had several big performances, and I think ultimately ran out of gas like most of the group did, just based on playing small and playing such heavy minutes. They have Austin, who I know Austin's also I know who's getting all the blame right now, and I get it, but Austin was a big part of the Lakers' regular season success. There were plenty of nights where AD was out, or LeBron was out, or Luka was out, and he stepped up and delivered big performances. The Indiana game comes to mind. The Denver game comes to mind. Even though they lost that game, they nearly pulled that game off without 6 of their top 8 guys, in part because of how dominant and just how great Austin was in that game. And he's also someone who I think has been more of a playoff riser than a playoff faller. I think he was not up to par and not up to his standard, not up to the standard the Lakers needed in this series. Clearly, I thought game 5 was probably his worst game when the Lakers needed him most, and he struggled with his shot. It was either inside the arc or outside the arc. One of the two was off. I think the turnovers, the decision-making, that stuff has to be better. And to his credit, he owned it after the game, that he was like, if you want to point the finger at someone, point the finger at me. I had to be better. I need to be better, and I will be better. So look at that. I look at the Lakers and the role player foundation. I still think it would probably be more ideal to slot each role player down a peg. But I thought Rui was incredible tonight, and he was battling in there. Like he was at a major size disadvantage against Rudy Gobert, and there was only so much he could do in terms of the defensive glass. But he hit several big shots. I think like to start, he hit 4 of their first 6 threes. The Lakers really struggled from deep tonight. DFS did not have a good shooting series, but I think defensively has a certain level of versatility and toughness and just basketball IQ. Gabe had some moments. Goodwin didn't play tonight. Jackson, I like as a backup center, but clearly I think is not at the level of a starting center, as we quickly saw in this series. And then Kleba. I mean, it's tough to judge a guy off 6 minutes in a playoff game. It is team debut, but I think you saw the outline of like what he could potentially be for this group moving forward. So I think there are some things like they clearly need to make some changes, and that is going to take me to my first real takeaway, I guess, which is that this series to me exposed the Lakers' two biggest weaknesses, and it's size and depth. And I think in many ways, while I don't disagree, or while I do disagree with JJ's decision in game 4 in the second half, no one knows their team better than a coach. And in my opinion, that decision was an indictment on both the Lakers' lack of size and their lack of depth. And I think they were like Vando. I didn't mention Vando. Vando was great tonight. He came in and made a difference. They put him on Ant finally. It took them 5 games. I like that's another thing that JJ could have done better. But still, if you like, they kind of had like 6.5 guys that you could really trust, and that's just not enough. And that's something that they need to address this summer. And clearly, like, it's funny that guys have kind of deflected, and I get it, because when you're in the course of the season, you don't want to be making excuses or talking about your weaknesses or your flaws. But like several players after the game, when we were doing our exit interviews with them, all spoke to the taxing nature of playing centerless, of playing small ball, of guarding up, of the rebounding and the rim protection, and that stuff really just cumulatively adding up and just being too much for them to overcome, especially in this series and this matchup. I think there's other potential matchups that the Lakers could have had that they would have advanced and it wouldn't have been as much of an issue, but they made Rudy Gobert look like prime Shaq tonight. Again, I didn't really want to get into the game, but like he had 20 playoff career highs, 27 points, 24 rebounds, 9 offensive rebounds. Like he just was obliterating them inside, and to a man, you know, multiple guys said post game that they kind of danced around it a little bit, but it was clear, like, we need more size, we need a center, we need more rim protection, we need more rebounding. That was a big theme post game. So I don't want to absolve JJ of some of his miscues, and I don't want to absolve some of the players for their performances. But even with it, like, whether if JJ played 7 guys instead of 5 in game 4, they probably win. But I don't know that they win this series. And even if they win this series, I think we saw in this series, like, this group's ceiling was lower than I think most of us thought. Like, this was not, I don't think this group probably gets past the next round if they somehow would have advanced, which it's crazy to say that, you know, it's crazy to think about them advancing when they lost in 5. But if they somehow advanced and it went to the every other day format, I just don't think they had the legs. I don't think they had the depth. I don't think they had the collective juice to advance. Like, I think they probably would have lost to Golden State in round 2. Or if they somehow got by and that was like a 7-game series, they would have lost and gotten slaughtered by OKC in the conference finals. So I think we saw a ceiling here. And to me, it just comes back down to, like, they did not have a playable center. We could quibble with if Jackson was playable or not. I think he probably could have had been a 1 to 2 shift player off the bench. And you know, I would have liked to have seen that. I know we saw it, like, he got a couple of bench shifts throughout the series, but he still was primarily the starter. I would like to see what that would have looked like, but, you know, we can't go back. But clearly the depth, like, they need an extra rotation player or 2. I think they need to take the back end of the roster more seriously. Like, I also thought tonight was an indictment on the Alex Len sighting of, you side this guy, and then in a situation where you don't trust your starting center, you're really struggling on the glass, you're struggling to protect the rim, you can't go to this guy. because he's just not good enough to play. And it was like, then why was he not waived for Trey Jemison or Christian Koloko? If it was like a favor for someone or trying to save face because you swooped him from Indiana, it still was like that was like you could have used a Trey like. I think if Trey Jemison or Christian Koloko were on this roster, they probably play ahead of Maxi Kleber tonight. And I'm not saying that's the difference in the Lakers winning the game, but they didn't even have that option. They had to play a guy coming off of injury, off a 3-month injury. It's wild. So I think size and depth are clearly like the Lakers need at least 2 more rotation level guys within the rotation. And what I'm saying is like, if you, let's just say you swap 1 or 2, you swap Gabe plus something for a center, or I'm not even gonna, whatever. Let's just say Gabe. If you get a center back, I still think you need 2 more rotation guys. It's not like just because you got a center, you're like they need a net positive 2 more rotation caliber guys in addition to needing a center. So I think what they really need is like a center, another 2-way wing, and a more athletic point of attack backcourt guy. And they need really like 3 needs, in my opinion. But to me, the biggest thing, again, we can criticize JJ, we can criticize certain players. I just don't think this roster is deep enough to be a legit championship contender. And I don't think they had the requisite size, particularly in the form of a playable center for even 15 to 20 minutes a night. And those 2 things ultimately undid this group and their potential, in my opinion. Because again, I think there's a universe in which they win this series, but it was going to catch up to them at some point. And I think they were able to mask it a little bit during the regular season, or a lot, frankly. And we knew they weren't the best defense in the league, but I thought they could be a top 10 defense. And that just was not the way that this played out at all. You got to be able to rebound the ball to be a good defense. And then takeaway number 2 for me is from a tactical perspective, right? Because we're talking about the roster. I think that was like the biggest thing for me is just the clear holes in the roster that were exposed in this series. Takeaway number 2 is they have to figure out the offense. And I think this was the side of the floor that like Luka fit into the switching scheme that they were running. I think they need to reevaluate that and make some shifts with that, because it allowed teams to target Luka and Austin and Gabe and Rui and Jackson. Like the guys they wanted to target at various times, they were able to target. But I think the biggest thing is getting on the same page offensively. And I thought Luka said something post-game in his exit interview that was interesting about Kyrie, and how when he first teamed up with Kyrie, they weren't exactly on the same page. They didn't know how to complement each other. And that it took them, like post-trade, it took them that summer and then going into preseason and having a training camp and a preseason together was what got them more on the same page. And then we saw they were able to go to the finals together. So Luka was sharing some optimism as to the potential and the fit with LeBron and with Austin moving forward if they can have some more time together. And that was another thing post-game that was a theme of just, I believe they had 13 games in the regular season with the healthy rotation, and just the lack of time and the lack of continuity with the top end part of the group just coming back to haunt them at some point. So I think, of course, time will help, but I think they need to do a deep dive on the offense. And there was times it looked really good, right? With the offensive organization and the play calling and whatnot. They got to get back to that, and they got to do that more consistently. So I don't even think they need to change what they are running or the individual actions or the play calling. I think it's how frequently they do the play calling. And it just felt like there was too many times, especially in the fourth. I think they averaged like 17 points per game in the fourth quarters in this series, which is just absurd. And they have to figure that out. And part of it was legs and fatigue and whatnot, but part of it was execution. And I think having a summer and a training camp and a preseason to go through the offense with Luka, but also with LeBron and Austin. That's what's going to take this offense to the level that it should have been at, and I think could have been at, but wasn't at. And it might just take a little bit longer than anticipated. And then takeaway number 3, before we get into Q&A, just offseason questions. So I think the biggest question is probably, what is LeBron going to do? Because that is such a domino with the rest of the offseason. So he's got the player option, $52.6 million for next season. He could either exercise that and opt in, or he could opt out. And then if he opts out, he can either re-sign with the Lakers or sign somewhere else. We don't know how much longer he wants to play yet. And we don't know if he wants to play another season. I would, again, assume so. That's the way I'm going to operate, but we don't know that for sure. So you have LeBron, you have Luka, who is extension eligible as of August 2nd. And one of the interesting things with that is that at the trade deadline, we spoke with Rob Pelinka, and it was right after the Mark Williams trade. And he had an opening statement, and this was a small scrum with just the beat reporters. And part of his opening statement was that right after the Luka trade, he and Luka met in his office at the facility when they were giving Luka the tour and welcoming him. And they talked basketball, and they talked about the roster, and the center position was brought up. And Luka suggested to Rob that he plays best with a vertical lob threat, similar to Dallas with Gafford and with Lively. And so Rob clarified that it wasn't like a demand. It was more of just them talking about Luka's preferences and what he would like at some point. So Rob said, I'm going to go and try to get you that player for the deadline. If not, we will be aggressive and get you that player this summer. They tried to get that player with Mark Williams, who then has been dancing on the Lakers' grave, although it might hurt his back. So we'll see. You should probably stop. But he's been dancing on the Lakers' grave. They get Mark Williams for a couple days, then he fails the physical. They rescind the trade, but by deductive reasoning here is that if they did not get that guy at the deadline, they are going to get that guy in the summer. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for the Lakers, is finding the right pick and roll partner and rim protector to pair with Luka, because that is such a critical part of his offensive functioning and operating. Like he likes that pick and roll partner. And there were moments where it was a high level with Jackson, but Jackson is more of a backup center. It just is what it is. And they need a starting level center. So they need to find that guy moving forward. And that needs to be atop the list. Of course, exploring the trade market and seeing what else is out there. And you got to figure out the LeBron situation and just like the top end of the roster. But clearly, like, they need a starting level center. It probably needs to be someone making double-digit money, and they need someone who's going to fit with Luka and who Luka is going to like and who Luka is going to want there. So that's the biggest thing to me, and I think that's something that has been telegraphed. It was publicly on the record as to they had a conversation about it, and it was, if we don't get you this guy at the deadline, we're going to get you this guy in the summer. So now the summer's here, much earlier than anticipated, and I think that's going to be the top line item for the Lakers in terms of additions, is going to be a center. Then you got JJ and just his staff and his status. Like, I would be shocked if JJ is not back. And I'm currently working on a story with Sam Amick at The Athletic about just some of these questions and what we know about it, what we've been able to uncover. So don't want to spoil anything, but I would be shocked if JJ is not back as the Lakers coach. And again, I think a week ago, people were singing his praises. I understand the criticism. I understand the backlash, but I still think JJ is a good young coach with a lot of potential and some things he should learn from this series. And then otherwise, I think the interesting thing is just Lakers have $40 million or $40+ million in expiring contracts between Rui, Gabe, and Maxi Kleba. They have one tradable first round pick, either their 2031 or 2032. I believe that activates post 2025 draft, like once the draft starts. Then they also have one pick swap in 2030. So those are their primary assets. I'd also throw in Dalton Connect as an asset, but that's going to be the primary stuff they're working with. I don't, DFS has his player option to figure out. I don't think Vando, I again think that like he's probably someone that the Lakers are going to be keeping, and I think they are going to be valuing him more than his potential trade market value. So we'll see. There's a lot of different ways this offseason could play out, but I think right now those are some of the questions that are percolating and questions that will be answered in the coming weeks and months. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. Philip, trade everyone for Giannis, need him next to Luka. I mean, if you can get Giannis, you have to consider anything, but outside of trading Luka. But I don't think the Lakers have I think there's going to be a certain level of draft capital that is required to get Giannis that I don't think the Lakers have, but we'll see. I mean, I did think they could get Luka, so anything is possible. Cody Doncic, any relation to Luka? What would you give up for Bam? Love from Sydney. Love from Los Angeles. Thank you for the super chat. What would I give up for Bam? I mean, I think any Bam package would have to start with Austin, and that would be something that, like, I'll say this. I was recently asked about Bam. I think it might have been last stream or a couple streams ago. I just don't see LA having enough for what Miami would want. Like, if you're Miami, you already have Tyler Hero, and I think Austin's better than Tyler Hero, but you can argue that they're similar levels of players, relatively similar enough that like that doesn't really move the needle for me if I'm Miami. I would not give up LeBron for Bam. I still think there's a gap there in terms, like, LeBron's a better player, and now will he be a better player next year? I don't know that. I would assume so, but Bam's kind of a tricky one for me because I just don't see a clean fit from the Lakers side in terms of like what Miami would want. Like, if you're offering Austin, Rui, Dalton, and a first, like, is that moving the needle for Miami? No, I think they could get more for Bam. So I don't see a realistic fit with Bam in terms of trade package. Ali, good season, optimistic for offseason moves. There we go with some optimism. Yeah, I mean, I think the Lakers have some flexibility here. They certainly have to be aggressive. They certainly have to be. I would not run this group back entirely. I think probably one of the top 7 should be moved, or again, if you could just add to it, that's even better. But realistically, like, they probably have to make a trade or two, and I think I'd be looking to bolster the supporting cast with more size, athleticism, length, etc. Samir Dude, thank you for the super chat. What is your initial read on Luka's future with the Lakers? Does he sign the extension in August? I don't. So I'll give you 2 answers to this. I would not be concerned with Luka's future with the Lakers. I think that he will be a Laker long term. So that, I guess that's my answer to the first part of your question. My read is Luka will be a Laker for the foreseeable future. I don't see that changing. Now, does he sign the extension in August? I'm less certain and clear on, just because there is an element of, like, he can sign the extension, or he could just play it out and then hit free agency, and there isn't a big financial difference. The key is going to be, does he sign like a long-term extension or re-sign for a long-term contract, or is it like a 2+1? Because if he does a 2+1, he can opt out after the second year. he'll be at 10 years of service, and then he could sign the mega 5-year, I think it's $418 million supermax or 35% max at that point. So regardless of whichever path he takes of extending or playing out his contract and then re-signing, opting out and re-signing, either way, the most financially lucrative way to make up the money that he lost from Dallas and being traded and not being supermax eligible would be doing some type of deal where he can eventually opt out after his 10th season and have that 35% max. So either way, I think that's the way this likely goes, whether it's in the form of an extension or him just playing out the contract and re-signing. That I don't have a great read on yet, but I'm trying to work on it. And either way, though, I think Luka is going to be a Laker for a while. Rich, thank you for the super chat. Since the trade, I've leveled my expectations. We're not constructed for Luka finishing third. Had us delusional. Need time, a center, and a wing. Then we'll be good. I think this is the right perspective. I don't fully. I think they're more constructed for Luka than people think, because I do think that there are some pretty good catch and shoot players on this roster. They didn't all have the best series, but like looking at Rui and DFS and Gabe, even Austin, what was a good catch and shoot player this year. Again, especially looking at Austin, Gabe, and DFS, all were pretty up and down with their shooting. Rui was the most consistent one. But I think that they have, like, you want shooting. Now, the pick and roll partner, it was Jackson the regular season, but there was a fool's gold element to that. It did not translate to the playoffs. So clearly they didn't have that. And I think with Luka, you want a certain level of size and athleticism and versatility defensively that the Lakers didn't quite have. So I do agree to an extent that they didn't have the optimal roster for Luka, but I think there were, like, he had success with DFS before. Gabe is a 3-and-D type guard. Rui has become a 3-and-D wing, and I think there's some similarities with him and PJ Washington, who just was thriving next to Luka. Jackson was like a homeless man's Derek Lively, I guess. So, I mean, you could see like there were some outlines, some similarities that I guess like LeBron is much different than Kyrie, but that other like alpha star ball handler, though he often played off the ball, especially in this series. So they could certainly build a more optimal roster in terms of adhering it to Luka and his strengths and preferences. But to your point, center and a wing, and those are the two biggest things. Fahim, thank you for the super chat. Took JJ 5 games to make an impactful lineup change. Lots of random offense, few tactical adjustments. Game 4, no rest debacle, no LeBron, Luka 2-man game, gentleman sweep, etc. Rough start to JJ's playoff coaching career. Agreed on all fronts. You could argue, I guess, that he made the lineup change in Game 4 by benching Jackson to start the second half, but still was too late. I think by Game 2, it was clear that Jackson was not really a fit in this series and was not a fit as a starter. So I think starting in Game 3, they should have gone to DFS, and that was something I was saying at the time. That's not something I'm like retroactively saying. Random offense. So actually, I wrote this down at the beginning of the game. I was curious just to see. So I had my 5 adjustments that I wanted them to do for Game 5 and beyond to extend the series. So adjustment 1 was start DFS. They did that. Adjustment 2 was run more organized offense. They did not do that. They actually had, I believe, per Crangus, it might have been the lowest offensive organization rate of the series in Game 5, or certainly below 50%. Mix up coverages with Ant. I thought they did that. They struggled, like they threw out a zone. They were shading over to Ant more aggressively from the top. Sometimes a soft double. There was some hard doubling and blitzing. So I will give them credit for mixing up coverages against Ant. The problem was the backline execution and rotating and scrambling. Like guys just didn't have the energy or the focus, or I don't know what it was, but especially the zone was a bit of a disaster. The zone did not look good. And there was the one play where I believe it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like LeBron or Luka, the two closest guys, like one of them has to rotate and they just don't. And they both kind of are like looking at each other. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker gets a wide open three in the corner. And it was a weird, I thought it was a 2-3 zone, but then LeBron was playing up top and it was just kind of confusing like what they were doing. So they didn't do, I would say they mixed things up defensively, but it did not go well. But at least they tried. So I'll give them I'll give them that one. Play the bench more. I guess technically they did that. Gabe played 26. Vando played 19. So no good win, but I'll give them credit for that one. And then win the possession battle. They got slaughtered again. Minus 11 in field goal attempts, minus 8 in free throw attempts, minus 10 or minus 17 on the glass, but minus 10 in offensive rebounds and plus 4, which is a bad thing. So they had 4 more turnovers than Minnesota. So they didn't do one of the things, couldn't do another one of the things. So they did 3 of the 5. And there were some moments there where it looked like they were maybe going to steal the game and like just get to a game 6. Bad shape, but it didn't happen. But yeah, certainly it was not a good start for JJ, I would say. And I'm someone that's been high on JJ. I was high on the hire. I've been high on him during the season. I think he had a really good season in the regular season. But the LeBron Luka stuff, like we even saw, we'd see a possession every now and then where like they would do some type of screening action, but you could just tell that they don't have the chemistry from it. And it's not because they can't do it. They're both smart players. They just don't have the reps. And it would have been nice to see that during the regular season. Young Claire, thank you for the super chat. 2 questions. Realistic trade you expect the Lakers to pursue for point of attack, wing, and center. What would your ideal 10-man be next season? Thanks for the content. Ooh, that's a good question. It's hard to say the ideal 10-man without knowing who they're potentially trading for, right? Because, again, I would say just like keep your top 7 or 8 and just add a couple guys to it. Point of attack. It's tough to say off the top of my head, to be completely honest. I think center wise, like someone who I think the best realistic option is probably Nick Claxton. I don't see Miles Turner's an impending free agent and Indy's about, they're in round 2. Maybe, who knows how far they'll go. I think they'll probably lose in this round, but they have a good thing going there. Conference finals and then second round. I think they probably try to keep him at that point. Wing, and I would see maybe free agency being a little bit more realistic, and if they could create an exception, open one up. But I would say to your point, my ideal rotation would probably be something like a good starting center. I'd be okay with LeBron, Rui, Austin, Luka, but then I would want DFS, Gabe, Vando, another bigger athletic guard, and then like maybe Jackson and another big athletic wing, and kind of have like those 11 as like the top 11. But it's about adding like 3 rotation guys to the team that it's easier said than done. So I mean, maybe Dalton ends up being in there, but I could also see him being part. Like I think any team that trades with them is probably going to ask for Dalton. Like that would be my guess. So we'll see. I will give you some better. I'll have some trade targets and free agent targets in the coming weeks, but off the top of my head, I think it's a little too early for me to give you better answers on those. So I apologize. Gary Singh, you can't win with 3 bad defenders, AR, Luka, Rui on the floor in the playoffs, especially playing small ball. Frustrating seeing AR always overhelping, left Conley open for a big three in the last minute. So I think you're not wrong. I would contend that all these guys, I think Rui, in my opinion, improved a lot on and off the ball. I think this was a tough matchup for him because he's not quick enough to guard Ant, though I thought he had some decent moments against him. He's not strong enough to guard Julius. And he's actually had success against Julius, and that was something I talked about going into the series. But like Julius was playing out of his mind, and also, like I give a major hat tip to Julius Randle with the series that he had, and he was just physically dominant and just a beast in this series. Luka, I think, can be a solid off-ball defender, but on the ball can be targeted, obviously blown by. We know the blow by percentage that's been going around. Like that can be an issue for him. Austin, should not be guarding Ant. Like that's not a good matchup for him. I think Austin, I do think his help defense, especially in game 4, was a bit underappreciated. And especially like Gobert went 1 for 6, and I believe 3 of those misses were directly because of Austin in terms of him slapping at the ball or poking it away. And like, I think he did some things in this series that like ultimately they needed him at a certain level offensively, and he just wasn't there. So I'm not caping for Austin. I'm not saying like he had some awesome series, but I think he was better defensively, in my opinion, than giving credit for, especially with the off-ball stuff. On the ball, there was some rough moments for sure, especially with Ant. In terms of overhelping, I actually think that was a little bit more of a scheme-related thing tonight, and just like they were selling out on certain guys, and I would have to rewatch that possession to tell you if that is Austin's fault or not in terms of what the scheme is calling for. But I think the problem with their approach tonight with selling out so much against Ant was that it left them vulnerable on the back line even more so. And that's why, partly why Rudy had such a big game and with lobs and dump off passes and offensive rebounds, was because there was always an advantage in the paint, even more so than normal, because the Lakers, they had more guys shifted up to try to take away Ant and the step backs and some of his shooting. And they wanted to dare the rest of the guys to beat them. And they kind of won the bet because Minnesota actually went 7 for 47 on threes, which is the worst percentage for a team that's won a playoff game that's attempted at least 25. So like LA actually was able to force them to shoot a lot of shots that they missed. The problem was they rebounded everything, and that gets back to the size and whatnot. But to your point, like, there are certain defensive limitations, and that's where there could be some hard conversations we have to have later in the summer or whatnot in terms of roster construction and just the optimal way to build this roster around Luka. Matt DeBlasi, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for everything this Lakers season, Jovan. Honestly, the best part for me was Buha's block and the community you've built. Lifetime fan here. Look forward to the next meetup. Appreciate you, Brate. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming out to the meetup. I appreciate your support. Appreciate the super chats. And that is, awesome to hear about being a lifetime fan and going to the next meetup. So I look forward to seeing you again. Millions. Now I just mentioned the threes and you hit on it. 7 for 47. That's not a typo. 7 for 47 on threes, and they still lost by 7. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Minnesota shot 14.9% on threes and somehow won this game, which speaks to LA. They shot 29.7% on threes, but the turnovers, the rebounds got slaughtered. Stephanopoulos, thank you for the super chat. Two of grind, the to them. I'm extending Rui if he's cheapish and trading AR for less redundancy. Team needs playable bodies and better fitting pieces. So I don't understand the first part of what you wrote. I don't know. Is Rui extension eligible? I don't know if he is. Could be wrong. Let me see. I will look that up. I don't think he is. Again, I could be. Oh, he is. Yeah, he okay. So, well, this is incorrect because it says Luka becomes extension eligible on July 6th, but on Spot Track it says Gabe, Austin, and Rui are all extension eligible on July 6th. So, Rui is extension eligible. Cheapish, I think is probably around his contract value. You could argue more or less, but AR, I do not see the Lakers trading AR. I know a lot of people want to trade him after this series, but I don't see the Lakers doing that as of right now. Dotun, thank you for the super chat. We kept expecting them to buck the trend. Midseason big moves, a rookie coach, no playable center. Luka must get in shape. AR, JJ must be better. You basically said everything I said the first 40 minutes in 5 sentences. So, yeah, I mean, there was also remember going back to the one thing I said around the Luka trade was just that rarely we see teams win the title coming off of a big trade. This bore out again. Doesn't mean it can't happen. And there were moments where it looked like maybe the Lakers would buck that trend, but they made a huge trade. They had a rookie head coach, as you said, no center. But Luka getting in shape or better shape, AR and JJ being better, agreed with both of those. Golden said, made a list of realistic free agents. Any thoughts? CP3, Bruce, Nance, Clint, Adams. Try to focus on toughness or size. Bruce and a big would be ideal. Well, thank you for the super chat. I love me some Bruce Brown, so I'm always on board. I don't think he had a great close to the season in New Orleans. Let's see what his numbers were. He averaged the shooting got better, and it was getting better in Toronto before the trade, but yeah, he's pretty much similar to Toronto. Shooting was about league average. His 2-point percentage was a bit lower, but I'm guessing I think they had him a little bit more on the ball than he probably should have been looking at. His usage was down, so that's an interesting one. I would like him depending on the contract. I think one thing here is that I remember the Lakers do not project to have their non-taxpayer MLE, which, for example, is what they signed Gabe with. If they do, and what they were trying to sign Jonas Valanciunas with, if they do, they are hard capped at the first apron, and then depending on what happens with LeBron and several other things, they might have to shed some salary to get under that first apron. So that's just a factor to consider with some of these guys. CP3, I would probably say no to be honest. I like him as an initiator and as maybe a second unit floor general, but he's 6 feet and he's almost 40. And I think he hits on the toughness that you're talking about. He's got the relationship with LeBron. He knows JJ. I'm sure he would sign for a minimum, but I mean, maybe if there was tempered expectations as to his role and he wasn't guaranteed a rotation role, I would consider it. But I think I just think he's too small, especially for their switching scheme. Bruce, I think, would fit. Nance, I think, would fit. Clint Capella, I think, would fit. Steven Adams, I think, would fit. Clint is in the mold of the type of big that fits with Luka. He has aged a bit. He's now in his early 30s. He is no longer the rim protector or finisher that he used to be in his Houston days or even his early Atlanta days, but I like him a lot. He was someone that I was high on in terms of a potential target. Nance is a bit small, but he is versatile and can do a bunch of different things. Can be a bit of a lob threat, but not like, doesn't have that hulking size the way that Steven Adams does. And I like Steven Adams a lot. That might be my favorite target just because I think he's realistic. He's probably could go for that taxpayer MLE, which does not hard cap you at the first apron. That one's closer to around like 6 million. Non-taxpayer MLE is like 12 to 13. So Adams, I think, is someone that could be, and as Sam Amick reported around the deadline, the Lakers called the Rockets about Adams and inquired. So they've had interest in several of these guys to varying degrees. So I think that's a pretty good list. I still think on the wing side, they could use a little bit more size, but like Bruce could be that more athletic backcourt guy. Then you add one of the bigs and then you go find a wing somehow. There's work to be done, to be clear. Stephanopoulos, is it just me or was the relationship between LeBron and Luka a little cold? Don't notice much communication. Team vibe seemed off the last few weeks. I wouldn't read too much into it. My understanding is they have a good relationship, and I think that there's a mutual respect and admiration, and I think they have gotten closer progressively through being teammates. So I will acknowledge, like, the vibe in general had been a little bit off, especially during this playoff series, but not specifically with those two. Just like, I don't know what it was never quite there during the playoffs, like, or it kind of faded pretty quickly. I don't know why, but I wouldn't read too much into that. Danica, thank you for the super chat. There's already a blueprint for how to build around Luka 2020, 24-25 Mavs. What's your confidence level with Rob to pull off something based on his track record? Well, I think they're going to get a center. I think they're going to get a good center. Maybe they'll get two centers. Maybe Jackson goes somewhere else, and maybe they could get Nick Claxton and Steven Adams, something like that. I think Rob has the capability to pull something like that off. I think the one thing I would like to temper some expectations with is, like, the Lakers just don't have a lot of, I don't think they have a lot of attractive contracts. Like, they have some expirings, but I think they're varying, and like, expirings don't carry the same weight necessarily that they used to. And I also think they're relatively limited with the draft capital. So I think if they had either better contracts or more draft capital, there'd be more optionality this summer. But I think they're going to have to get creative with how they build this roster and what types of moves they make. But I think he can do it. But I think one thing I will say is I think he's had more success pulling off trades than signings, in my opinion. And right now, Lakers don't have much, like, they don't have cap space. So at most they're doing a non-taxpayer MLE, if not like taxpayer MLE signing and like vet minimum guys. But I have more confidence in his ability to build a roster through trade than I do via signing, I would say. Because I think most of the trades, with the exception of like the Westbrook trade, I don't put the Zubats trade on him. But I would say, like, they have a pretty solid track record with trades and how those have worked out for the most part, especially in the Rob era. I would say some of the signings, especially some of the minimum guys, there's been a lot, in my opinion, of misses with those guys, especially with the centers. And I would be, if that's the route they go, I'd be a bit concerned. Nico Harrison's burner. What's up, man? Thank you for the super chat. Everybody upset with Rob/JJ. This season's expectations thrown out the window with the Luka trade. Give Rob/JJ a chance to go into next season for us to judge. Want Luka as our only defensive liability next season. I think that's a fair pushback and fair perspective. I would say the only thing that I will be critical of, I think there's a little bit for like certainly with the series, some things that JJ could have done better. I think the center thing was a thing going back. I mean, we were talking about that last offseason on here. If we go back and like look at the center rotation, and I was even saying I don't love Jackson or Christian Wood being the backup center, and I think they need to upgrade that, and that it just, Jackson developed, and that's a credit to JJ and the coaching staff and the player development. But we saw there was a limitation there, especially in this series where they needed a certain level of size and they just didn't have it. So I think the center thing was something that we could see coming last offseason. They had all season to address it. They did try to address it with the Mark Williams trade, but I think there probably should have been an insurance play that added another center on top of it. Because again, I made this point recently, but like people around the league were not surprised that they failed Mark Williams. And I think that should have been intel that they had, that if they were prepared to potentially fail him, you would know you needed another big on top of it. And I just think they were ill prepared for the whole big man situation. And that's before, like, that's pre-AD trade, that's even pre-season. I think that goes back to 2 off seasons ago with the whole Christian Wood, Cam Reddish, Jackson Hayes thing. I think that was a mistake. They ended up waiving Christian Wood and Cam Reddish this season. Like, they just shouldn't have been on the roster. Jackson, I think, ended up being a good value relative to being a minimum guy, but you still needed another big. And I think they messed that up. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. JJ postgame said they played small ball to score better, yet they only scored 96 points and 16 in the fourth. So why not just have a bigger lineup in there with Vando and rebound better? Good pushback, fair pushback. I was thinking the same thing. I would be interested. Let's pull this up just for interest level here. I want to see the lineup, the on-off data. I'll share it with you guys. One sec. All right, here we go. I wonder if it's updated. It is updated. So in terms of offense, we'll just focus on offense. Wow, this is wild. Lakers were 26 points per 100 possessions better with Luka on the floor offensively. That 85.7 offensive rating with Luka off. Only 32 minutes, but yeah, their offense died without Luka. Okay, Jordan Goodwin, DFS, LeBron, Gabe. So they had 5 players who they were better on the floor with offensively than not. Luka, Goodwin, DFS, LeBron, Gabe. So interestingly, 3 of those guys were bench players. DFS eventually started, but he was a bench player for 4 of the 5 games. Then you get to Vando at minus 2.9, Austin minus 7.4, Jackson at minus 8.8, Rui at minus 13, and then you get into the bench guys all the way down here, like the back end bench guys, the garbage time guys. So really among the rotation guys, Rui was the guy that actually struggled with the most offensively, which doesn't really make sense to the eye test, but I guess that's the way it was. So to JJ's point, they were 8.8 points per 100 possessions worse with Jackson on than off offensively, which is the second worst mark among the real rotation guys. And then Vando was also a negative. So like, I mean, Rui is part of the small ball stuff, but you could argue that like DFS, Gabe, Goodwin, they were better offensively with some of the bench guys and going a bit smaller, but Let's just see overall on off. 26.8 points per 100 possessions better with Goodwin on. Then we go through the bench and DFS 14.3, Luka 11.8, Vando 11.8. That's another thing to playing more Vando. 9.8 for Gabe. Then we get to the negatives. Minus 11.1 for Austin, minus 21.8 for LeBron, minus 26.3 for Jackson, minus 32.3 for Rui. Jeez, that is rough. You guys, okay. Well, you guys can see that here. I'll stop. Okay. So I'm with you. I think that's an excuse that doesn't really hold up. They did not score with or with that. Like really the only, I know the Rui stuff, I think there's some noise with there or in there. I think Jackson's the one guy that they clearly were worse with offensively. Everyone else, it was like pretty much a wash. Mr. Fantastic. Thank you for the super chat. No excuse, a 25-year-old to be such an unathletic blob. He's 26, but I think he's better than that. But I hear the frustration. Mint Millions. Thank you for the super chat. Can't believe it. I thought we were going to the finals. Also, Jackson played fine in the beginning of game 4. I don't know why he couldn't have just played tonight. I was with you. I partly didn't make the pick because I didn't want to upset Laker fans by picking them to lose to Boston, but like I was strongly leaning toward picking the Lakers to just lose to Boston in the finals. I know I talked about that before. Jackson was like, I think there was an undisciplined nature to him in this series that just in general, but like that caught up to him in this series with the picking up the 2 fouls in game 4. But I agree. I think it was, I don't know. I go back and forth. I think I would have liked to have seen him in a bench role. And then if that, like ideally they benched him earlier, they probably benched him after game 2. Then in game 3, you see what he looks like in a bench role. And then if it doesn't go well by game 4, he's out of the rotation. The problem was like, you did need a certain level of size. And we saw in the second half of game 4, starting really in the 4th quarter. And then in this game, it was like, basically playing without a center, that there is a limitation there. We saw actually really, throughout the whole series. So it's tough. I've gone back and forth with what I think with Jackson, because I think the lineup data, as I just said, like second worst on off on the team. The offense really struggled. They got crushed in his minutes, but I don't think that's entirely his fault. I also think there was ways they could have ran the scheme better offensively, but it is what it is. LeBron, Hog Rider. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for all your hard work, Jovan. Amazing coverage. Love your behind the scenes videos. Need a behind the scenes of you styling your hair, please. Okay, we got it. Yeah, that'll be coming. We have a lot of good stuff coming. And thank you. I really like basketball. Thank you for the super chat. LJ's response to your question, going to get aggregated, put on the TV shows tomorrow. LOL. Think Lakers brass will have any ego over it. Hashtag late night gang. I don't think they should. It was kind of a playful jab from LeBron. But for those who are unaware, context, I asked LeBron about the physically taxing nature of playing centerless and playing smaller. And if he felt like that eventually caught up to the group. After really kind of making that shift in January and then playing like 3+ months of smaller basketball and guys playing out of position and playing up. And he said, no comment. And then he made a jokey, semi-jokey reference to AD. And he was like, my guy AD asked for I'm paraphrasing here, but my guy AD asked for something, like they traded him the next week. So I think he was kind of joking that if he asked for a center or asked for them to do something, that he might get traded, which of course I would not expect. And I don't think it's going to happen, but LeBron was kind of doing some ribbing there, and it was funny. But yes, it's going everywhere. It's going viral, and it will be on all the shows. Russell Garrett, thank you for the super chat. I asked if you would trade Austin in a trade for Walker on another asset. You said no. Would you do it now or try to get the defensive guard and sign 1 or 2 of Brooke, Capella, Nas, Bruce B, Dennis? I still wouldn't trade Austin for Walker Kessler, and regardless of my opinion on that, I am fairly confident the Lakers would not trade Austin for Walker Kessler. I think if they were to trade him, it would be a higher level player than that. Though you know me, if you know me, I'm huge on Walker Kessler. So I've been a big Walker Kessler guy. I was advocating them trading 2 first-round picks for Walker Kessler. So you don't have to sell me on him. But I think the second route of trying to get a defensive guard and then getting another big would be a better path, in my opinion. Jared Madrano, thank you for the super chat. Says, thanks for the coverage all season, Jovan, for all the emotion after the game. It's hard not to think that we have a great foundation with Braun, Luka, AR. What do you think the building blocks are? What do you mean by building blocks? Like, because I would argue that those 3 are the building blocks plus JJ, and then all the role players, supporting cast guys are like relatively replaceable or upgradable. But I think, of course, like Luka's got a good relationship with DFS. He's got a player option. I would expect him to be back, either opting in or opting out and re-signing. Rui, I think, had a pretty good series and pretty good season, all things considered. Gabe has been a bit up and down, especially with the shooting, and that's maybe a spot they could upgrade on. Jackson, I think, is fine as a backup, but clearly would JJ, like, I just wonder with JJ if that, where that's at, because he didn't even trust him to play like a backup role, and even tonight, like, could have played him instead of Maxi Kleber, chose not to. So I mean, I think the primary building block is Luka. I think Luka is the center of the Lakers universe now, and everything is going to revolve around him. And I think how they build out the roster and how they build out their offensive and defensive systems needs to be around Luka and maximizing Luka. So I would say in that sense, I guess Luka is the key building block, but I think they have several. Joshua, thank you for the super chat. Would LA have been better in this series with AD than Luka? No, I think, again, I just read you the numbers. Luka had the 3rd best net rating difference in this series for LA, and the offense was 26 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor. Like, they could not score with Luka off the floor. So I know the defense, like the defense was 14.2 points per 100 possessions worse. So certainly the defense was worse with Luka on the floor than not. I mean, 80 would have held up better. Like, it would have been different. 80 would have held up better with the rim protection and the rebounding. But I don't think 80 is the offensive engine that Luka was. And maybe could LeBron have done more of that? But I think they intentionally shifted LeBron off the ball more and like wanted him to be a bit more off the ball, even if we can disagree with that assessment. Like, so I think Luka is still a better player than 80. Still, if we're also doing this like hypothetical, we have to go back and look at like AD was not healthy at the time of the trade and try to rush back. And I know the Lakers were surviving for a bit, but I don't, if you just take off like Luka and AD from this group, I don't think this team ends up winning 50 games and being the 3 seed. So I think if we do the sliding doors of like AD versus Luka, I don't even think they're playing the Wolves in the first round. I think they're probably a play-in team. And we don't know if AD is healthy or what's going on with that. So I think it's tough to say. Like, I think you're specifically talking about this series. So if we entertain that hypothetical, like, they'd match up better with the size. I just think the offense would probably be even worse. And I think this is there's like a deeper systemic thing here, because the same stuff happened in the Denver series. the same stuff happened when AD was a Laker in terms of how many times would they have the low scoring fourth quarters, or the ball would stagnate. They would take questionable shots in crunch time. And this has been a thing for years now. So I don't think like Luka kind of fit into that at times, but there's also times Luka saved them, not in this series, but in general. And like, I don't know. I still am on the side of, if I'm the Lakers, I do not regret the trade. Certainly room for Luka to be better conditioned, better defense, but yeah. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Whatever center Lakers plan on getting needs to be able to switch on the guards, otherwise not going to be worth the assets playing 15 minutes a game. Yeah, I think they got to be versatile defensively, be able to switch a bit, be able to protect the rim, be able to rebound, and be able to finish. So, I mean, that's those four things are not, those players don't grow on trees. That they're not easy to find. So that they're going to have to do their due diligence and potentially make some tough decisions. Michael D. Thank you for super chat. So how long do we got to wait for the juicy offseason drops you promised? JK Jovan, thanks for everything. You're the only Lakers coverage I tolerate. I appreciate you. Story should be coming out tomorrow. It's not that juicy, but we do give some clarity to some of the situations or just advance things with our reporting. So be on the lookout for that. And I'll probably come on here and talk about it after. Team hiatus. Thank you for the super chat. Jovan, I can't believe we wasted another year. Heartbreak emoji. I hear you. The saddest part of all this is like, of course, just like the season ending and the Lakers not reaching their potential and whatnot. But I think it's another wasted year of LeBron and him being 40, year 22, and like not seeing LeBron in the conference finals. It sucks because we don't know how many more of the, like, we could get one more crack at it, at watching that, right? So that stinks. Braden, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Brate, I just want to say thank you for a great journey this season. We love you, and although it wasn't the end we wanted, your post-game shows got us through the ups and downs. Talk soon. Appreciate you. Thank you for the continued support. You do a lot of super chats, and I appreciate it. So shout out to you, Brate, and there'll be more shows to come and more ups and downs, but we will get through it. Keon Park, off the top rope. Thank you for super chat. It's time to get Giannis, AR, DFS, Gabe, and Vando Kleba in one first. Don't think the Bucks would want Rui because they have Kuz. Then Braun take less next season and get Brook Lopez free agent. I like the way you think. However, I don't see Milwaukee doing that for that package. Because like OKC, Houston, San Antonio, Brooklyn, New York, Miami, there are teams that could top that depending on what they're willing to give up. So I think if now it's different if Giannis demands a trade to the Lakers, then the Lakers have the leverage there. But I think there's been some backlash with trading with the Lakers, especially with stars, and I think teams are going to be sensitive to that. But I also like Brook Lopez depending on the price and the context. Team hiatus. Thank you again for the super chat. Past seasons, if only we can combine the players that were good for us, just different timelines. Walker, Stan Johnson. So Lonnie Walker, Stanley Johnson, Malik Monk, Dennis Schroeder, Wenyen Gabriel, Troy Brown Jr., Carmelo Anthony. You got some throwbacks here to my earlier days on the beat. Lonnie could have helped with his athleticism. Stanley Johnson and the defense, the positional versatility. Malik Monk, six-man microwave guy. Schroeder, obviously, with his point of attack defense and just his toughness and tenacity. Wenyen Gabriel, I've not heard that name in a minute. Troy Brown Jr., that one I'm not as sold on. Nice guy, but not as sold on that one of him making a difference. The Mellows, when he would get hot, that was something. He could go in those flurries. Philip Reed, yo. Turns out Austin isn't him. When intensity, physicality ramp up in the playoffs, he shrinks. 82-game player. Luka needs athletic two-way support. Thank you for super chat, Philip. So my lone pushback to this would just be that I think Austin was a playoff riser in the previous 4 series he played. I think this is certainly his worst series, and this was also the series he had the highest expectations, so maybe there is a correlation there. I'm not saying there's not, but if we look at Austin's playoff track record, and it's tough, like he's always had like bigger second halves of the seasons, but it's like, okay, so second season, he finishes the year averaging 13 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists on 53, 40, 86 shooting splits. In the playoffs, he goes to 17 points a game, more points, 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 46, 43, 90 shooting splits. So field goal percentage dips, threes go up, free throws go up, all counting stats go up. Last year, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 49%, 37%, 85% shooting splits, goes up to 17 points, 3.8 rebounds, 3.6 assists. So the rebounds and assists dip a little bit, 48% from the floor. So that's higher, or just about similar to regular season, but we know it's harder to scale that into the playoffs. So say similar. Really struggled from deep, was just 27% on threes, and that was a big thing in that Denver series, his inability to make threes. But like overall, his numbers were slightly better or similar, which I consider at least like a playoff neutral, I think is a positive thing. Obviously, this series, the season, he averaged 20 points, 4.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 46, 38, 88 shooting splits. And for the series, he ended up averaging 16 points. So the points dipped by 4 points. That's a lot. 41% shooting, 32% on threes, 86% at the line, but only 1.4 free throw attempts. That was a huge part of this. He was not getting to the free throw line. 5.5 rebounds, 3.6 assists. So the rebounds are about the same. Shooting dipped, scoring dipped, assists dipped. Though the assists dipped for everybody. LeBron's assists went down. Luka's assists went down. So I feel like that's kind of a team-wide thing, but they just couldn't score. But yeah, the free throw, like certainly his worst series. I think it's too early to write off Austin. I personally think this was probably the worst matchup in the league for him between Minnesota and Houston, but I understand people are upset and writing him off, but I think he's been better than not in the playoffs. But it is a factor. I'm not going to say it's not a factor to consider moving forward. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. Feels like AR fumbled the bag. Tough series. Not sure him, Luka, Braun is a good fit. We need Claxton and like 2 more KCP types. Want DFS to stay too. I agree with DFS. I know people are upset about some of the shooting stuff, and I get it, but like he's typically shot well in the playoffs. Remember, like the thing I will remind people of is go back to the 2021 series against the Suns and remember KCP did not have a good series. Alex Caruso did not have a good series. Kyle Kuzma did not have a good series. And the Lakers, in my opinion, and I think this has been borne out, overreacted. They chose not to re-sign Caruso, even though they could have. They traded KCP and Kyle Kuzma for Russell Westbrook. And Kuz is now God like this, right? But he had some moments there where he was ascending and like looked like, I mean, he was good for the title team, but looked like he was on a certain trajectory. KCP helped Denver win a championship and was like the ultimate 3-and-D like poster boy for multiple seasons. And Alex Caruso is now making a huge impact for the Thunder as one of the best perimeter defenders and like just bench players in the league. So point being, like, I would just caution against overreacting to one series. I think maybe the bigger picture takeaway with Austin is maybe he isn't a true number 3, or maybe he isn't as high of a level as number 3 as we thought. Maybe he's lower in that tier or that list or whatever. But I would just caution against like again, coming off that Phoenix series, there was a lot of overreact, KCP and his inconsistent shooting and his inconsistent play and Kuz and him accepting a certain role and well, Caruso, I think everyone was upset about and wanted to keep. So that was a little bit of a different situation, but it just, I think sometimes bad series happens. It was a 5-game sample against a tough physical big team. And I think Austin needs to learn from this and grow from this. And again, that's just one that I wouldn't overreact to. Jamie follows up and saying, I feel AR would be so much better as the 6th man. Like maybe, I mean, the one thing I will say is I do wonder about the ultimate fit with those three and just like, maybe it's not the cleanest fit and that they got to figure that out, but I'm still for Austin starting and being the number 3, but I'm open to being wrong on that. Gary says, thank you for the super chat. JJ did a bad job the way the Lakers doubled Ant. Should have doubled once Ant got into his move rather than doubling at the top of the key. This I agree with. I think they needed to do it a little bit more selectively and in certain spots of the floor, especially on the sideline. I think more on the sidelines than the middle of the floor because it gave him the ability to read the defense. And then Lakers also just struggled to be in rotation in this game. I think they did a really bad job of that. Young Claire, you think the Lakers revisit the Mark Williams trade? I don't think so. I think there's bad blood between the Lakers and the Hornets after that deal. Hornets took shots at the Lakers with their statement. Mark Williams is trolling them on social media. I don't see that happening. Joshua, thank you for the super chat. No sense starting AR, Luka, and LeBron, AR 6 man, and start 3-and-D wing. Again, I still lean toward AR starting, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just wrong. But I mean, the starting group, I don't know. I would like to see what it looks like with a center, and I think if I don't know. Certainly, they need better defense in that group. Like, I wonder if you potentially move Rui to the bench and bring in a 3-and-D wing to start there and a new center, and maybe that kind of solves it. Like, if you have those three plus a big 3-and-D wing and a big center, like, just for hypothetical, Rudy's not the perfect big for Luka, but like, imagine Rudy and Jaden McDaniels as the 2 other starters next to AR, Luka, and LeBron. Lakers will look completely different with that group, but. Yeah. Ethan Hill, thank you for the super chat. LeBron should consider joining the Spurs or the Kings. I take it you're not a Laker fan in that case. I do not think LeBron will consider this really either team, but between these two, I think the Kings have a very bleak future. So I guess if he was going to consider one of these two, I would suggest the Spurs. Adrian, thank you for super chat. Is the LeBron James era in LA over? I do not think so. I think he's going to play next year. Antonio Rosas, when do you expect LeBron to make his decision? Well, I think June 29th is the date that he has to decide by. So I would guess pretty close to that date. What would be my read? Rich, thank you for the super chat. If Braun retires or walks, do we have his money to spend? That would clear the cap sheet partly, but if we pull up the Lakers situation here for next year, They have about some quick math. I mean, I guess I want to say around like 125 in active salary. Yeah, so I mean, my quick math read would be like they could maybe clear upwards of like 30 million in cap space, but you're not replacing LeBron with 30 million. So that like you're not getting a player of LeBron's caliber for 30 million. So either way, it's going to be a downgrade. Brad V, thank you for the super sticker. Nico Harrison's burner. Do you think Dalton can be a key piece in the rotation next year in the playoffs if he's still on the team? Yeah, I think so. I think he's got to get better defensively, and he's got to remember plays. Like those are two pretty basic things that he has to do a better job of. There were too many. You guys saw the viral clips, like, but there's too many times he didn't remember a play, even if it was called for him, and that's like inexcusable. So he's got to get better with that. But yeah, I think he can be a rotation level player next year. Arnold, thank you for super chat. Hack a Center. Anyone watch Kerr Game 4? Bane and JJ for Austin's Kerr small team. Bane and JJ, Austin Rui pick swap. So you're saying Austin Rui in a pick swap for Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. I do not think that Memphis would do that. I don't even think. I think if you even took out Bane, I don't think Memphis would do that. But I like the thinking. I like the logic. Sam, can Braun restructure and take the minimum to bring in help? Well, he could opt out and then sign for the minimum. But I do not anticipate that happening, to be completely honest. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. How many first round picks do we have to trade? AR and 2 first round picks gets you a star. KD, they have 1 first round pick to trade, and they have a pick swap. So the most they could do in that scenario would be AR plus 1 pick and 1 swap. Omaris Hall says, if LeBron didn't sign with the Lakers in 2019, it was 2018, who do you think the Lakers get? I think Kawhi signs with the Lakers. That might have happened had he not, like, I think Kawhi partly didn't want to be in like LeBron's shadow. So might have been. Zephyrin, thank you for the super chat. Props, you have one for always bringing intelligent and rational discourse to Lakers coverage, especially in the social media era. Looking forward to the future, more discussion, and maybe meetups. Keep going. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I am really going to go 5 more minutes here because the Lakers are having exit interviews at 10 a.m. with Rob and JJ. So I'm going to have a long night ahead of me. Jay Riz says, what do you mean rational discourse? He completely ignores that the Wolves score half their points on Luka. I said Luka's defense was an issue. I'm not ignoring that. So, I mean, I think he's providing a lot offensively, and that star level shot creation is like still the most valuable thing in the league. So I think certain guys can get, it's a little tricky how you factor in a guy's defense, but he progressively throughout the series, especially I think in game 3, it really was on display, but I give him a slight pass because he had the stomach bug, but I think that led into game 4 and 5 of them targeting him even more. And his defense was not where it needed to be. I don't even think like his defense was better like 2 weeks ago, let alone like in the playoffs. So that was disappointing from a Luka perspective. But I'm maybe not going to hammer him the way you want me to. Philip says, Jovan, is this the biggest disappointment you've experienced since covering the Lakers? I would maybe say, I think 2021 was pretty disappointing because it was the title defense. They were, I believe, the second seed when AD went down that year. Then they were still a top 3 seed when LeBron went down with the Solomon Hill injury. Then they fight their way to be in the play-in. They have that play-in win over the Warriors. And then they're up 2-1 on the Suns. I think they're going to win that series and potentially get to the finals. And then AD goes down and it's over. Nico Harrison's bird says, nothing compares to the ugly season with Westbrook. That was the worst season of my life. I actually agree with that. It was the worst season of my life too. But yeah, 2021, I think there was a clearer path to that team winning a title. Rich, do you think Luka slims down in the offseason? I do. I think he's had enough of... he's gotten the backlash. He's gotten the criticism. I think this is a guy that's motivated, and it's harder to lose weight during the season. But I think with an off season, I think he'll come back in much better shape. Well, Mars Hall, Jovan, you think Luka will play with Slovenia this summer? I do. I do. G-Rock 1021, thank you for the super chat. Hayes needs to be gone. Reeves gone for better defensive pieces. Go get Alexander Walker. Gabe needs to be gone as well. Alexander Walker, the tricky thing with him just might be that if he probably would, I would guess, cost the non-taxpayer MLE or at least part of it, and that's going to hard cap you at the first apron. So that's a complicating factor with him. Hayes might be gone just by signing with another team potentially. Gabe is probably the most tradable of like the expiring guys, or like the most expendable of like Maxi Kleba is, but I think Gabe has more value. And then Austin, I know everyone wants to trade him, but I would temper expectations. I don't think the Lakers will, as of my current intel. I don't think that's going to happen. Gary Singh, instead of adding more depth, Lakers should focus on a top 5-6. I think our top 5-6 is not championship level currently, getting picked on too much defensively. I would agree with that. I think, again, like one thing I thought earlier in the series that I made the point was like, I think ideally if there was someone to slot between Austin and Rui that pushed Rui from 4 to 5, DFS from 5 to 6, Gabe from 6 to 7, like that would help. You could argue, can you get a better 3 to push Austin to 4? But like that, I think that's the higher up you go on the ladder, it's harder to find like a better player that fits salary wise and all that stuff. And, but I don't disagree with that in terms of improving the top end, but I think it needs to be both, because I just think we're seeing it with Denver too. Like it's just, you need at least like in some ways you need like 10 playable guys. And I don't think the Lakers had 10 playable guys. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. If Kyrie wants to come to the Lakers this summer to do a sign and trade, do you think AR in the trade still or no? That's a more interesting one. I mean, Dallas, I just don't see Dallas doing another big trade like that with the Lakers, especially sending another star. The one thing with Lakers didn't want to trade Austin for Kyrie several years ago. Now Kyrie has rehabbed his image, stayed out of off-court controversies, and maybe that's a little bit different now. Like, I would take Kyrie over Austin in a vacuum, but I think when you factor in the contracts, because they're not making the same money, that's a little I would guess the Lakers probably wouldn't do that, but maybe if Luka really pushed for it. That's a good point people are making about Kyrie's injury too. So good. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking about like the basketball fit, but you guys are right. Kyrie could miss all of next season potentially with his injury. So that's another thing. William Rodriguez says, I would have traded AR for DeJounte Murray. That's a what if that was something the Lakers considered, but ultimately decided not to. Hans De Leon, did someone already ask Jovan what his thoughts are on the Mark Williams tweet? I did a little bit of a Mark Williams joke earlier about him dancing on the Lakers' grave and hurting his back, but yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, I think the lost in translation part of the whole thing to me is like, I feel like he and the Hornets acted like the Lakers were saying he was currently not healthy, and the Lakers were arguing about his future health. And that's a little bit harder to project, but like there can be certain physical things that you see in a person's physical that indicate they will not age well. Or there are certain issues that could get worse with aging or playing more or whatever. So his whole thing about like, I'm healthy, I can play, like, I think that was him just trying to save face, also because he's trying to get money. G-Dog, Jovan, do you understand why the Timberwolves didn't want Luka for Ant? Yeah, I mean, I think you can make whatever argument you want in terms of who you think is the better long-term player or even who's the better player right now. I think when players are on, like I would say they're on similar levels, like even before this series. Like when I heard that, I mean, Ant's a bit younger. I obviously he's better defensively. I don't know if that's the point you're getting at, but I think there's also an element of like, if you have a young star who your fan base loves, like I'll just flip it. I'm sure there'd be a lot of Minnesota fans that were happy if they made that trade, but I'm sure there would be a lot of Minnesota fans who would be upset and be like, we don't want Luka. We want Ant. Like, Ant's our guy. Like, I think there's something to having your guy that you drafted and is homegrown. And so there's also, I think like the difference with Luka getting traded to the Lakers versus some other places too, is that typically LA, Lakers, like that is a place that can retain a star. And just stating the facts, like stars tend to prefer bigger markets. And of course there are exceptions. So I'm not saying it's like a blanket thing, but if a guy gets traded to an LA, a New York, a Miami, a Chicago, like those places typically, because they are bigger cities, have a better shot of keeping that guy. Whereas if Luka got traded to Milwaukee for Giannis or Minnesota for Ant, that would be a huge gamble on Minnesota or Milwaukee's part, and with no assurances that Luka's staying. Even the Lakers did not have assurances that Luka was going to re-sign or stay when they traded for him, but they took that risk in part because they know they're the Lakers, they know they're LA. So I think regardless of how you view Luka versus Ant, and if you want the younger guy, the more athletic guy, the better defender, or you want the guy who's had more playoff success and is more proven, I would just say that I think a big factor here with the whole Luka for Giannis, Luka for Ant, whichever ways people want to take that. Like, I think the big thing is you just don't, if you're Minnesota, like what you are potentially trading Ant, alienating a big part of your fan base, and then Luka just walks at some point to go to the Lakers or the Heat or the Nets or something. So that's where I think this is where sometimes big markets have a certain advantage over smaller markets. And Minnesota, Milwaukee, they are smaller markets. Gary, thank you for Super Chat. Braun should have jacked up at least 30 shots today, especially after 0 points in fourth quarter game 4. Frustrating when he defers so much. I agree. I thought he was really good defensively, but sometimes was a little too deferential. I don't want to end on that note, so let me end on a more positive note. Jay says, "I'd never trade Luka for Giannis or Jokic. They're too old." Yeah, I think that's a good place to end this. Like, let's remember here, the Lakers did the Luka trade. They are set up for years to come. He still, in my opinion, had a really good series. It could have been all right. I guess Keon Park is popping in with a super chat. So, Keon Park says, last question, not about the Lakers. Do you think Dame can be traded with the age and injury, or should Dame just retire? I don't want to tell a dude to retire, especially I'm sensitive to Achilles injuries because I suffered one myself about a year and a half ago. But I think that's going to be a really tough contract to trade. But with all that said, not the end to the season I think any of us were anticipating or wanted, but that's sometimes how these things go. As I said at the top, or a long time ago, the Lakers have a strong foundation, but some changes need to be made. And I think they need to address the size and depth issues with the roster and some of the defense and athleticism. They need to figure out the offense from a tactical perspective. And then obviously there's some offseason questions with LeBron, Luka, etc. But that'll do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. Again, we got 10 a.m. exit interview with Rob and JJ. I will have a story coming out at The Athletic with Sam Amick, breaking down some of these big offseason questions and our intel on it. So we'll probably pop on to talk about the JJ Robb press conference and then talk about the story and then maybe go live after that or do a video. I'm not sure, but leading toward live. But appreciate you all. Shout out to the Late Night Game again. Late Night Gang, not game. I was thinking about the game. Just want to say thank you again for all the support. And even if you don't like me, even if you don't agree with me, you watching, you super chatting, you commenting, appreciate it all. I will talk to you all tomorrow and brighter days ahead.